In 1858, a British naturalist climbed a fog-drowned Borneo peak and stopped riding home. By the time he came back down, he carried a plant with a hollow belly large enough to hold 3.5 liters of liquid, and something dead was floating inside it. His name was Hugh Low, and the mountain was Kinabalu, the tallest peak between the Himalayas and New Guinea. Low was a careful man, a collector who labeled everything twice. But the pitcher plant he found near the summit did not fit the polite botany of his era. It was not a delicate bog curiosity like the ones pressed in English herbariums. This one was the size of a small bucket, its mouth wide enough to fit a human fist, its inner walls slick and waxed. Local Dusun guides already had a name for it, and a warning to match. They said animals climbed in and did not climb out. Low wrote down what he saw, sketched the vast cup, and sent it to London. Then he went quiet on the details. What he had actually found sat in a jar for over a year before anyone dared describe it. Mount Kinabalu rises 4,095 meters straight out of the rainforest of northern Borneo, its granite summit cold enough to freeze at night, even on the equator. On its upper slopes, the soil is a thin, sour skin over bare rock, stripped of nitrogen by relentless rain. Almost nothing rich grows there. And yet this is the only place on Earth where the giant pitcher plant, Nepenthes rajah, sinks its roots. It grows nowhere else, a single mountain, a few ridgelines, and no further. The plant that Low collected belonged here and only here, which is part of why London struggled to believe him. In a landscape that starves ordinary plants, this one had solved the problem in the strangest possible way. Instead of pulling nutrients from the dirt, it built traps and let the animals come to it. Each pitcher is a modified leaf, swollen into a cup and half filled with fluid. What almost no one expected, and what makes the rest of this story stranger than a single drowned rat, is what that fluid actually does, and how patient the plant is willing to be. To understand that, you first have to meet the men who went looking for it. Hugh Low did not climb alone. He was the colonial administrator of Labuan, a small island off Borneo, and in 1858 he joined the British consul Spencer St. John to attempt Kinabalu's summit. Their tools were plain: barometers to read altitude, glass jars, paper presses, and Dusun porters who knew the mountain far better than any European map. The party moved slowly, cutting through moss forest where every branch dripped. Low had seen pitcher plants before. The genus was already known in Europe, sold to wealthy collectors as glasshouse oddities. But nothing prepared him for the scale near the ridge. He measured pitchers over 40 centimeters tall, cups that could hold 3.5 liters of liquid, hanging from vines at ankle height. When the specimen reached London, the botanist Joseph Hooker examined it and, in 1859, gave it a formal name, Rajah, meaning king. Hooker called it the most astonishing plant he had ever described, and he was not a man given to excitement. Yet even Hooker recorded the killing power cautiously, almost reluctantly. The team had brought back the cup. What they had not yet proven was exactly what the cup was for, and the first real clue was already sitting in the fluid, waiting. A giant pitcher plant sits open on the mountainside, and something with fur is floating in the liquid inside it. When the collectors tipped one large pitcher out onto a cloth, what spilled was not clean water. It was a cloudy, slightly viscous soup, and floating in it were the half-dissolved bodies of insects, a drowned frog, and the soft remains of a small shrew. The liquid was not rainwater at all. It was a digestive fluid, and it clung to their fingers like thin syrup. That was the first reading that did not fit. A plant should not be full of digested animals. Under a lens, the walls of the cup were coated in downward-pointing waxy scales, and a lip so slick that nothing with feet could hold on. This was not a passive puddle that things fell into by accident. It was a machine, and every surface had a job. The fluid itself carried a wetting agent that broke the surface tension, so an insect could not stand on top of it the way a water strider stands on a pond. The moment prey touched the liquid, it sank. And once it sank, the plant began, very slowly, to take it apart. The collectors had expected a curiosity. What they were looking at was a stomach that had grown out of a leaf. Getting proof off the mountain was another matter. Kinabalu does not surrender specimens easily. Above 3,000 meters, the temperature on the granite can fall close to freezing after dark, and the collectors worked in near-constant cloud, their notebooks turning to pulp in the damp. A full pitcher weighed several pounds once its liters of fluid were counted, and it tore loose if you gripped the cup instead of the vine. Carrying an intact one down through the moss forest without spilling the evidence was nearly impossible. There was doubt, too, of a colder kind. Back in Europe, the idea that a plant could deliberately catch and eat a mammal ran against everything polite science believed about the order of nature. Plants were the base of the food chain. They were eaten, they did not eat. A cup with a drowned rat inside could be dismissed as an accident, an unlucky animal that fell in and could not climb the slick walls. To prove intent, the team needed to show the plant was built to do this, on purpose, again and again. And that meant returning to watch a fresh pitcher fill, and wait, and work. The mountain, the weather, and the scientific establishment were all, in their own way, telling them to stop. A giant pitcher plant can drown a rat, dissolve it, and absorb the body, and people have found the proof inside the cup. In the largest pitchers near the summit, the pool of fluid holds as much as 2.5 liters of digestive liquid, deep enough that a rat which climbs onto the slippery rim and slips has nowhere to stand. It does not drown in seconds. It struggles against walls it cannot grip, tires, and goes under, and only then does the plant's real work begin. Enzymes and acids in the fluid start to break down the fur, then the skin, then the softer tissue beneath, over days and then weeks, until little is left but bone, and the plant has quietly drawn the nitrogen it could not get from the soil. This is the thing Low could not bring himself to spell out in his letters. A plant on a starving mountain had learned to eat the animals that eat plants. Whole rat catches are rare. The pitchers evolved mostly to trap insects, and the drowned mammal is the dramatic exception, not the daily meal. But it happens, and it has been photographed. The giant on Kinabalu had turned the entire logic of a food chain upside down, using nothing but a leaf shaped into a cup, a slick rim, and the patience to wait for gravity to do the rest. It took decades for science to fully accept what Low had carried down. The giant pitcher plant is now protected, its wild range still just a handful of ridgelines on one Bornean mountain, and poachers strip plants for private collections faster than the species can spare. Modern researchers have confirmed what the Dusan guides always knew. The pitchers routinely drown and digest not just insects but frogs, lizards, and the occasional small mammal. Stranger still, some of these giants have struck a truce with the living. Tree shrews climb onto the rim to lick sugar from the lid and leave their droppings in the cup, feeding the plant nitrogen without dying at all. So the same trap that drowns one animal quietly pays another to visit. The plant that London could not believe turned out to be doing something no textbook had a category for: gathering meat on a mountain where nothing else could be fed. Low went quiet because he had seen the order of the living world turned exactly upside down, and it has stayed that way ever since.